We come to you now from Our Lady of the Eucharist Parish here in Pittston, where Sister Mary Ann Cody, a member of the Scranton IHM community, was recently installed as the Parish Life Coordinator. In our next segment, we'll see how Parish Life Coordinators represent a new model that draws upon the talents of many parish leaders in sustaining a vibrant faith community. Sister, the concept of a Parish Life Coordinator is a new one for faithful in this diocese. How did it come about in this particular parish community?
In our community, we had been dialoguing with regard to the needs of the diocese. Probably for the last year and a half, we were very much aware of the fact that our pastor would be retiring. We knew that this was an option that was kind of on the table, and we had talked and reflected on it. We received a copy of the bishop's message to the diocese the second Sunday of Easter this year, and as parish leaders, the Parish Pastoral Council, the Parish Finance Council, under the leadership of our pastor, Father Tom Maloney, we viewed the video and we talked further about it. And at that point, our parish leadership said, you know what? We think we might be positioned to be a pilot program for this. We have certainly been trained well in leadership by our present and former pastors, and maybe we should put it out there and say to Bishop Bambera, we'd be willing to be your pilot if you need a pilot.
Jerry, obviously you spent a great deal of time thinking about this parish model, and you realized that it was the right one for this parish community, but why?
You had people who were confident in what their leaders were telling them we might want to think about. You had people who we were all taking an active role in our parishes, and I'm talking about into 3 parishes initially, and then once we came together in 2010, there were a large group of people that wanted to be active and involved in what was happening in the parish. So I think that's why. I think we were positioned perfectly at the time, and I was one of the ones at many of the Pastoral Council and Finance Council meetings who used to say, we just need to get across to the bishop that, Bishop, you don't need to put a pastor in here and take him from somewhere else. Let's try out what eventually you described for us in that video. Mm-hmm. Because once we saw the video, when that video went off that night, there were about 15 of us in that room at that time. We all looked at one another and said, this is us. We can do this. So let's just tell the bishop we want to do this and let him make the final decision, obviously, because it's his diocese rather. But we just felt like this was us. We were sitting there ready to take this on.
Sister, for the benefit of someone who's watching this program today and still isn't quite familiar with the concept of a Parish Life Coordinator, how would you describe your role in that capacity, and also your collaboration with Father Walsh and Father Plednick?
Well, the definition of a Parish Life Coordinator, as it's been put forward by the diocese, is the Parish Life Coordinator is responsible for the daily spiritual, financial, administrative running of the parish. And Father Jeff comes in as our sacramental minister. He celebrates liturgy with us on the weekends, and he celebrates with us on Mondays. He's here and available for all sacramental anointings, baptisms, celebrations of funerals, all the reasons why we need our priests, our sacraments. Father Plednick is our canonical connection to the bishop. And so he will come here once a year and celebrate Mass with our parish community on a weekend. It's also hoped that he and Father Walsh and I will get together on a regular basis and just say, how are things going? Where might we make corrections or movements? We haven't done that yet, but we've just gotten started.
Obviously, Sister is not a new face in this parish. She's been working here in the parish for the last several years. But in the short amount of time that she has officially been the Parish Life Coordinator, what has been the response of this parish community?
Sister is familiar to the people here. people don't have a problem coming up and talking to her. So I certainly can't speak to her because I'm not involved in every conversation that takes place, but people weren't afraid to go to Sister on that first Sunday that she took over and just continue on as if nothing had changed. I think the bright spot for us has been Father Walsh coming here, because I have heard people tell us how much they like him and they appreciate what he's doing for us, and how he's brought in a new life to us. They're still not used to the fact that we don't have a priest here every single day, 24 hours a day. That I can tell you, because I see people in the neighborhood or in the stores and they say that to me. But once you explain a little bit about what it is that Father Walsh is doing for us, they start to understand a little better. And again, they have the confidence in Sister because they know Sister. So for us, the transition from a parish pastor to this new pastoral council model is seamless. It really is seamless.
One of the things that's important and was always emphasized by Father Tom and now by Father Jeff is that we are a Eucharistic people, and we get our source from the altar, from the table of sacrifice. That's where our center has to be. And going from the table, we have to be able then to look beyond our four walls. And I think when we had that meeting after watching the bishop's video, we were called to look beyond the walls of this parish and say, okay, there's a need in the diocese. Can we fulfill that need at the same time being true to ourselves? So that's where it flowed from.
Father, looking back over the last couple of years, why did Bishop Ambera and the diocese decide that they had no choice but to start looking at other models of parish leadership?
I think the bishop was really interested in being proactive in recognizing the trend of the diminishment of clergy that would be available to staff parishes. So when he looked at those numbers and the trends, he looked to canon law and see what is the church's alternative that is allowed, to be looked at as a viable way to continue having vibrant parishes, even though there may not be a priest who can serve as pastor in that community. And so as he looked at those alternatives and then began to match up that reality of where our diocese is at currently, probably for most people never thinking we would get to a point like this, but the reality is that it's here. So in a proactive way, I think he wanted to be able to open up that dialogue, not just in a small group of people that would be making decisions kind of behind the scenes, but to begin to make everyone aware of what the needs are so that people can begin to have their own dialogue at parish levels, so that when the necessary changes may have to come, they've already been aware of it, talking about it, praying about it, and being still able to realize that there's a balance that the bishop has to always maintain with the resources he has to be able to staff parishes, but also tap into the wonderful gifts and talents that many people in the community have to be able to step up into leadership roles and to continue to keep the parishes vibrant.
It's only been a short amount of time that you have been working in collaboration with Sister Mary Ann and Father Polednak, working with this new model. But what do you think? Is the concept of the parish life coordinator working in this community?
Yeah, it really is. It's very, I'm excited to be a part of this model because, for me as a priest, as I prepared for the priesthood, I envisioned wanting to be a pastor, and I have had that privilege. And I would love to be able to serve people in that capacity. And when I come here in this model for me as a sacramental minister, I still have that life-giving sense of being connected to a community. But I've been very much admiring how Sister Mary Ann Cody, as the parish life coordinator here, has been able to, she's already been able to tap into the gifts and talents of this community because she's served it for 8 years through the consolidation time a number of years ago and since its establishment in 2010. And when I came here, she was able to introduce me to people, not just by their first name, but their background, who's been in the hospital recently, different aspects of the person's family history. I thought, she's already been serving in a pastoral role here, and she's been recognized in that way by the people, and she really has a great sense of competence at the pastoral level and at the administrative level, and collaborating with people and and just collaborating with so many other people to make this model work.
I think one of the downsides of this model is the fact that we don't have a pastor actually living here 7 days a week. But has that been a hindrance to our sacramental ministry?
Not in the least. That's really been one seamless part of the transition, that when Father Maloney retired and they had a wonderful celebration for him and he's happily off to retirement, I was able to come in the very next weekend and be able to pick up with confessions and the Mass schedule on the weekends, and have had opportunities to be with the community when there's a death in the community, and I celebrate the funeral Mass, be able to celebrate anointings of the sick, visiting the hospital when needed, having a baptism. So the sacramental life never lost the rhythm of what this parish had seen previously. So I think that is an important part of people being aware that there is no lag, there's nothing that, with the diligence of Sister Marianne and others in the community saying, we've been preparing for this. It's not something that's a surprise. So let's try to make it as seamless as possible and not let anything fall through the cracks, and nothing has.
Father, in the months and years ahead, inevitably, when a parish finds out they may be getting a parish life coordinator, there's probably going to be a certain fear, a certain anxiety about them being treated as a second-class citizen, or maybe they'll start thinking their parish is being shut down. But is there any reason for them to be fearful of this leadership model?
I don't think so, especially if you go back and look at our bishop's pastoral letter, and also look at the guiding documents of the church and the canon law, that it's a model, again, that is recognizing that parish communities have a life. There's a need for a place of worship and for service and opportunities to grow in their faith. And many of our places in our diocese have been used to that model, and it's the ideal in canon law for every parish, and the bishop would love to put a pastor in every parish. But under the circumstances, these are the options. And I think no parish should really be resistant to it to the point of saying, this isn't something that's even allowed by the church. It is. And it's something that's important for the life of the church at this time. And now, is it meant to be forever? No, it's not meant to be forever. There'll be a term that a parish life coordinator will serve. And if that term is up at some point, there's also an important part of a community realizing that a pastor can one day come back in and serve in the life of that community. But all across the diocese and many places in our country and across the globe, this model has been successful. It's not, again, not the ideal by canon law, but it is something that is being able to keep the parishes flourishing. And it can happen. And we'll see that it will happen as long as there is that, keeping Christ in the center of the experience of worship and prayer and service.